Freight trains slide through fog toward the Thames estuary, while cargo drones hum over the Potomac. Not pomp and ceremony, but cranes, contracts, and containers. In back rooms lit by whiteboards and legal pads, staffers hash glosas about data portability and nuclear licensing, as if time itself were negotiable. Not a photo op, but a pressure valve, opening on both sides of the Atlantic. Here's the point you can use. This deal is a playbook for reallocating risk, compute, and capital across AI, nuclear, and quantum. And by the end, you'll have a practical map to make faster, cheaper, safer moves inside it. If that's the map you need, share this with one operator who needs it, and tell me in the comments which constraint hits you hardest. Before this moment, transatlantic tech moved like a convoy, slow, coordinated, and liable to stall at the first customs check-defriend regulators, duplicated approvals, and money that preferred buybacks to greenfield. Now the convoy is splintering into 3 fast lanes that run in parallel and collide at intersections. First, compute infrastructure, data centers, power purchase agreements, GPU clusters, and interconnect. Second, atomic energy, small modular reactors, fuel supply chains, and licensing windows. Third, quantum and biotech adjacency, labs, clean rooms, IP pooling, and security wrappers around sensitive know-how. The old world asked for pilots. The new world demands capacity. The old world optimizes for control. The new world optimizes for time to... 3 constraints govern everything you can actually get done. The first is electrons. How much power you can secure, when it arrives, and how clean it looks to voters and to your ESG auditors. Power isn't a line item. It's the gatekeeper that decides whether your purchase order becomes a building or a press release. The second is permissions. Permits, interconnection queues, safety cases, and export controls that slice the calendar into quarters and then into years. A license target of 2 years for reactor design review sounds swift only until you try to staff the review team. The third is proximity. Latency across fiber, distance from patients and scientists, distance from sovereign contracts, distance from community goodwill. Proximity sets your floor on user experience and on political risk. You can pay to move hardware. You cannot bribe your way around geography. Money and policy act as amplifiers that either shrink those queues or make them infinite. Long-term off-take contracts for power backed by governments hungry for jobs turn speculative megawatts into bankable projects. Matching funds and credit guarantees smooth the cost of capital. Pulling forward build decisions by quarters, aligned regulators who publish fixed timelines and templatable requirements convert uncertainty into program management. What does not help is romantic rhetoric about innovation without the boring scaffolding. Interconnect studies, easement rights, workforce visas, and indemnity caps. What does not shorten queues is a headline about $350 billion. If the substation is still at capacity and your transformer has a 6-week lead shimmy. Process eats announcements. Your curve pins at 5 decision hinges that look tactical, but decide the strategy. First, choose grid versus behind the meter for compute campuses. Grid brings scale and civic legitimacy. Behind the meter buys you uptime if the grid is brittle, but traps you into bespoke maintenance. Miss the maintenance plan and your uptime graph becomes a... Second, decide whether to chase leading-edge GPUs or architect for mixed precision. Chasing peak silicon closes the door to supply-constrained months, while mixed precision with quantization keeps the training schedule moving. but forces model teams to retool their habits. If discipline slips, you burn months on Third, pick your nuclear pathway, SMR fleet standardization with known vendors, versus experimental heat plus electric cogeneration. The fleet cuts learning curves, the experiment unlocks premium tariffs, yet failure modes to verge of fleet risk is schedule slippage. Experiment risk is regulatory reset. Fourth, collocate quantum and biotech or separate them. Co-location wins on serendipity and shared cryo talent. Separation wins on security boundaries and insurance. Blur the boundary and you invite IP contamination. Fifth, decide your data sovereignty stance early. Dual home in both jurisdictions with mirrored controls and key escrow. Or pick a primary and treat the other as ifu, weifu, single subpoena can unwind 2/4 of trust. First-order choices cascade into second-order consequences that stick for a decade. If you choose clean power at premium prices, your cost per inference goes up this quarter. But your brand earns a community license that lowers protest risk every quarter after. If you standardize on a single fiber route, your latency looks greatened. A backhoe turns one county into a global outage. If you cluster your supply chain near defense corridors, procurement accelerates while your hiring pool narrows to people with clearances. Real estate near reliable substations becomes the new rent. Interconnection queues become the new customs. And the effective floor on latency is no longer physics, it is policy in where you are allowed to build. Patterns are already visible on the map around the North Sea rim. Operators who can marry offshore wind curtailment with flexible data center loads are negotiating prices that make CAPEX feel like They dispatch workloads to soak surplus nocturnal power, then hand back megawatts at the morning ramp. Because they can flex, they get invited into rooms where permits get signed across the mid-Atlantic and into New England. Teams are repowering legacy industrial parcels with substation, adjacency, and rail access, turning rust into runway with minimal NIMBY heat. In the Oxford-Cambridge arc and the Boston-Kendall corridor, quantum hardware teams sit next to wet labs by design, and the security perimeter is as much about procurement vetting as it is about badge readers. In each vignette, strategy shows up as posture. The posture to say no to the wrong cheap land, yes to the right expansive interconnect, and not yet to hardware you can't feed with electrons. Limits and critiques deserve daylight. Skeptics argue the investment headlines are soft and the numbers blend public pledges with private intentions. They worry the UK gets vendor dependency and the US gets procurement floors, while homegrown challengers starve for growth capital. They point out that AI efficiency is improving so fast that today's megawatt math may look bloated in 2 years. Sparsity, distillation, and better compilers could have the energy per useful output. Communities fear water use in data centers and waste heat from reactors. They demand guarantees that the heat serves homes, hospitals, and municipal pools before it warms the sky. These critiques are not obstruction. They are the conditions for a durable license to operate. Answer them with designs, not tweets. Now, the delivery. A playbook you can run. Begin by defining what good means in your control panel. If your mission is model training throughput, then good equals scheduled GPU hours utilized at or above 95% with zero compliance breaches and a P95 job wait time under 4 hours. If your mission is clinical research acceleration, then good equals time from dataset ingestion to peer-reviewable finding under 12 weeks with audit trails on every artifact. With good set to the megawatt math equivalent early. Ask 3 questions before you sign anything. What is my guaranteed megawatts by quarter for the next 8 quarters? What is my interconnect date with a written milestone plan? And what is my backup plan if the transformer ships late? If you cannot answer those 3 in declarative sentences, you are gambling, not planning. Architect by Basin and Sigmund, not by in grids with abundant wind or nuclear baseload. Schedule training jobs to chase clean power windows like a trader chases spreads. Your scheduler should be a portfolio manager that moves work to the cheapest, cleanest star in urban basins with fragile hospitals and political heat. Push inference to edge or on-prem boxes that can ride through local grid flicker. While your training stays remote, build a latency and quality portfolio on purpose. Edge for sub-10 millisecond reactions, local for privacy-sensitive processing, remote for scale and economics. Route easy case is 2 lighter models and escalate only when needed. A smart router is cheaper than a bigger cluster. Keep quantization in the loop as a product feature, not a postdoc hack. Explain to stakeholders that 8-bit math still answers the question when the question is asked. Well, on the nuclear track, standardize your SMR vendor choice early so that procurement becomes muscle memory. Pair reactors with heat customers where possible district heating, industrial drawing, or desalination so that your revenue stack does not depend on a single tariff. Lock in your fuel supply with contracts that explicitly track sanctions and replacement time. Independence from hostile fuel channels is not a bumper sticker. It is scheduled integrity. For approvals, treat the safety case like software. Versioned, testable, and auditable with a record of changes and responsibles. A transparent safety case accelerates trust with regulators more than any lobbyist can. Talent is the silent capacitor. You do not hire a data center. You hire the 5 people who know how to keep it alive. Budget for visas, apprenticeships, and cross certifications up front. Put a bench in place before the outage, not after. Your maintenance planner is a strategic role. If you underpay that job, you overpay for every delay. Write playbooks for failover drills. The way you write runbooks for practice shifting workloads across borders so that a real geopolitical event looks like a Tuesday test on data sovereignty. Pick your doctrine and live it. Dual home sensitive data sets with myriad controls if you must, but be honest about cost and operational drag. You pick a primary jurisdiction. Do it for reasons you can explain to a judge. Residency, privacy laws, and the specific permissions your contract requires. Implement key management that survives a subpoena without theatrics. If your stance depends on a single executive saying no, you do not have a stance. Document your incident response with named roles and clock start triggers. Do not improvise in litigation time. Finance the boring beats. Secure ground leases with terms that anticipate upgrades, not just initial builds. Include liquidated damages for interconnect delays so your counterparties share your urgency. Use availability-based contracts in operations so that your vendor's pain equals your pain when uptime wobbles. Blend public climate funds and private infrastructure capital. Give the first loss to the party that wants the PR and the senior tranche to the party that wants the coupon. Money is a megaphone. Aim it at the bottleneck. Observability is non-negotiable. Instrument utilization, cost per useful output, and P95 and P99 analogs for your workflows so you can see when quality degrades before a customer does. Track carbon intensity by hour and publish it internally. You cannot trade what you cannot measure. Put error budgets on schedules like you put them on latency. A project with zero slack is a project that will raid your weekends. Build dashboards that a CFO and a plant manager can both read and argue over the same numbers. Let's recap as a checklist you can carry in your head. Secure electrons first, because electrons gate everything else. Win permissions with transparent safety cases and templatable requirements. Put proximity to users, fiber, and politics at the center of site selection. Bend the curve with 5 hinges. Power, posture, silicon strategy, nuclear pathway, co-location stance, and sovereignty doctrine. Treat schedulers and roadmaps like traders that chase clean, cheap, available windows. You now hold a map that turns a headline into a plan and a plan into operations you can defend. Use it to choose sites you can power, architectures you can feed, and partners who sign up for outcomes, not optics. Use it to say no faster to the wrong capacity and yes sooner to the right coalition. Use it to buy time, because time is what compounds. Now you have the map for your next step in this tech prosperity landscape. If you want more deep dives like this, follow and subscribe, and tell me in one line which single constraint or decision you want to unpack next.